Cheerfulness strengthens the heart and helps us to persevere. A servant of God ought always to be in good spirits. Charity and cheerfulness, or charity and humility, should be our motto. To preserve our cheerfulness amid sickness and troubles is a sign of a right and good spirit. A joyful heart is more easily made perfect than a downcast one. All right, guys, welcome. Welcome to Maple Syrup episode 277, beauty class number 12. St. Philip Neri. As you can see from the title later on, or the title that you're watching now, the Saint of Joy. Now, I think I am going to do this disclaimer basically every episode forever. Maple syrup history is called that because we have the maple syrup, the way the literal maple syrup is poured on pancakes, making a good breakfast optimal. We have maple syrup of facts, tons of thick, overabundant facts that is way better than just a normal kind of history program. We've done in the past Catholicism and disasters, logic, civil war, great war. Beauty is in the good, the true, and the beautiful is our theme this semester. And today's subject, once more, is St. Philip Neri. And on this channel that you're watching, so I always say you can go to the playlists, of course, Maple Syrup History, but also Catholic Topics Talks and Hippo Lectures. They're kind of essay pieces. There's a Hippo Lecture tonight. It's a brand new story called Sal, from Sal and Tommy on AM 740. These two New York, New Jersey sports jockey guys who are just like always trolling like a New York sports talk show. One of them gets asked to do a talk for the Pope. What might that be about? We have to wait and find out. Perhaps if you're watching this episode after I've already done the Hippo Lecture, you can go to the channel and find it under the playlist and watch it and all that. So without further ado, St. Philip Neri is the focus of today. Why is he beautiful? Because we need more joy in our life. I really think like cringy joy, fake smile, everyone should be super happy all the time, of course, is bad. It is inauthentic, it is off-putting, it is all those things. I think most people would agree with that. However, there is this, and especially, I'm not going to mention the Protestant denominations that specialize in this, but I'm looking at you and thinking of you that are like, holiness is about being dour and sour-faced and cancel Christmas and no dancing and that kind of stuff. And no. And by the way, I've got millions of Protestant listeners. My maple syrup history is the most popular period, anything in the Bible Belt in the South. So, it's not enough for me to thank individual communities. Just thank you, Mississippi. Thank you, Arkansas. I think the entire state, because everyone in the state watches me. All of you guys in the Bible Belt, if you're like, oh, how dare you? Catholics are so dour and holier than thou and, sour-pussed faced. Yeah, I agree. This is not a Protestant thing. Catholics can be the worst, actually, the most guilty of like, how dare you? You should not be having fun. If you're holy, you're going to be very, very serious. I always say it, a million times, that it's worth repeating, it's worth knowing that the opposite of serious is not funny. The opposite of serious is not serious. And the opposite of funny is not funny. And they're not mutually exclusive. And I know a lot of people that are very funny and very serious. And that's a pretty good combination. Like someone who's, does a good job as a lawyer or is a fantastic baker, takes their job seriously, has a great sense of humor. They're serious and funny. I know people, worst combination, double loss, who are not serious and not funny, right? So Philip Neri with his joy doesn't mean, joyful means you don't take the faith seriously, or joy means you're frivolous, you're superficial, I know a lot of very serious, frivolous people, right? Who think they're, oh, I'm so much better than everyone kind of thing. And, and then this is why I'm sponsored by mirrors.com, because I can look at the mirror always, and whatever I accuse someone of, I'm guilty of. I'm the worst on this kind of on this kind of stuff of anything. Like, how often do I, as the Bible says in chapter 7 of St. Matthew's Gospel, when Christ is doing his Sermon on the Mount, how often do I notice the splinter in my brother's eye without noticing the beam in mine? Philip Neri and joy, how it relates to this class, to the beauty class, the transcendental of the beautiful, which points towards God, who is beauty himself, the good, the true, and the beautiful. I think it's very, very simple. If you have a holy joy, you will more readily bend your will and bend all your work to the glory of God. A final point before I dive into the material itself, final point on this, it's like the difference between perfect and imperfect contrition. Everyone knows imperfect contrition is enough to receive absolution. I'm just scared of God. I don't want to go to hell. That's why I'm sorry. But what's better is, no, I'm sorry for my sins because I love God. Love is the ultimate goal. It's not so much that I'm afraid or afraid of hell. I don't want to let God down. I love him. Love, St. Paul says, right, covers a multitude of sins. So joy, love, all this is kind of closely united. So let me say about this. This is Philip Neri's first quote that I'm going to read to you of 26 quotes. I'll go through his biography. Today might be a pretty short episode in a good way, very kind of compact. I'm going to read you 26 quotes, and I'm going to finish all these preambles here. So when we do the quotes, we can just listen to the quotes and listen to this great man's wisdom, God-given, inspired by the Holy Spirit, wisdom. All these quotes are about the importance of joy and about kind of beautiful acts that flow therefrom. Here's the first one. Cheerfulness strengthens the heart and helps us to persevere. A servant of God ought always to be in good spirits. A servant of God ought always to be in good spirits. And he says, even more famously, I'll read this multiple times, and I already have kind of in the introduction to this video, even before in class today. A joyful heart is more easily made perfect than a downcast one. That's beautiful. A joyful heart is more easily made perfect than a downcast one. If you have that perfect contrition, that love, that I don't want to let God down because I love him, not just because I'm scared of being punished. I want to help the poor. I want to do beautiful acts, not because I feel like if I don't, I'm being sinful. No, I have a positive view to it. Not a negative, just thou shalt not, but thou shalt. I want to make the most of my talents. I want to love and be good and be holy. That's the kind of philosophy of St. Philip Neri. And again, all of us know the pitfalls and the cringiness of kind of fake joy. Brad, aren't you so crazy happy today? Everyone like that kind of, everyone, right? Yeah, exactly. But like, but kind of authentic joyfulness, not authentic joyfulness is what this saint of joy, Philip Neri, can teach us. And aren't you ready to hear all the stuff he has to say? I'm going to read you all his quotes after I give you the biography of who the man was.
Is he really the saint of joy?
Yeah, people say
he's the patron saint of joy.
So this is a great question. I think yes, in an unofficial sense.
Okay.
I don't think he's the patron saint of joy the way Saint Christopher, I believe, is the official patron saint of truck drivers, or Saint Anthony of lost things. Trying to think of another example. Saint Benedict, who we just finished talking about, is the official patron of monks and explorers. I don't know that Philip Neri, joy is one of his like official things, but he's considered the kind of the joyful saint. So patron saint of joy, the joyful saint, he's associated very much with this mirthful attitude. Another quote from Philip before we go to the 26th at the end. Be often reading the lives of saints for inspiration and instruction. And isn't that a great segue? Because that's what we're going to do right now. He says, be often about reading the lives of the saints. In this beauty class, episode number 12, 277 maple syrup overall, we're going to be often reading the lives of the saints. In fact, one saint today, Saint Philip Neri. So who was it? His dates of life are 1515 through 1595. He's known as the second apostle of Rome, informally. 1515 to 1595, 80 years. He dies at 79, technically. He's born in July, dies in May, so he's almost 80 years old. but he's a 100% 16th century man, 1515 to 1595, born and dies in the 16th century in what is today called Italy. The reason I say what is today is there's no modern Italian republic unified Italy till 1871. Back then you have, of course, Rome is the center of the papal states, kingdom of two Sicilies, that kind of thing. But he's an Italian guy, 1515, 1595, known as the second apostle of Rome after St. Peter. He is the son of Francesco di Neri. Neri is spelled once more Neri, right? Francesco di Neri and Lucrezia de Moschiano. The family were nobility in the service of the state, epic. So he comes from very kind of, blue blood lines. This is cool because we often hear about if Philip is super charitable with the poor, really epic work with the poor, very much living, seeing Christ in everyone, especially the poor. We often think, oh, this guy, he's kind of blue collar, he's this, automobile worker, man of the people, but he often perhaps came from humble circumstances. This is a man who comes from like the upper crust, kind of, aristocratic, noble background, and will, in imitation of Christ, who is the ultimate king of everything, right? Christ is the ultimate nobility, and yet chose the lowest place of being born in a stable. Philip as well, despite his noble background, or because of it, like Christ, takes this low, humble state, or will, throughout the course of his career. At the age of 18, 1533, he's sent to his uncle, who's a banker guy, who's a money guy, who's Wolf of Wall Street. Romolo, he's a wealthy merchant in the Neapolitan region of Italy, and actually, coincidence, at the base of Monte Cassino, the famous abbey of St. Benedict, who we just got done talking about. The goal is what? The goal is that Philip gets super wealthy on cryptocurrency, Bitcoin money, takes over the business, right? The idea is that he's going to learn from Romolo, who's a wealthy merchant, his uncle, and take over the business. But around this time, Philip Neri, in his teenage years, has a religious conversion. And in 1533, that very same year, he will move to Rome. He'll kind of move on. Business is not for me. The world, would that all of us have this detachment. Detachment from the world, if I'm not mistaken, is the fruit of the third joyful mystery, the birth of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. Detachment from the world. He has this kind of religious conversion, and I don't think it's a road of Damascus, crazy kind of thing, okay? To be very clear, I don't think it's like, oh, he was this really, or like, St. Augustine, tolle lege, and then he turns his life around.
So when you say converted, I mean, he's already a Catholic.
He's already Catholic. He has more of just like yeah, exactly. That's not the right word by me, and you're exactly right. He has like a deepening of his faith, or he begins to think perhaps have some kind of like more profound vocation than simply to be a businessman. He arrives in Rome, works amongst the sick and the poor. For a while, he does 3 years of study under the guidance of the Augustinians, this order founded by St. Augustine. He cares for prostitutes and the poor throughout the city. And he does what we can term, it's very cool, kind of street evangelization. Philip Neri, I can't stress enough. Remember, Saint of Joy, it's very beautiful about him. What also is beautiful about him? His normal guyness. Very normal guy. Very not extreme, normal dude. I don't like modern colloquial cheesiness. Oh, he's dude, bro, dog. Like, I'm using this word intentionally. He's a normal dude. He's a guy you can have just a normal conversation with. You look at some of the saints, they were not normal. We talked about that. Like, they were very, like, always in ecstasy, very withdrawn, whatever. Philip Neri is a very normal guy. And street evangelization, he would just walk around and be like, hey, you guys like the NFL? Well, this is my favorite team. And then they'd eventually get to talking about Christ in some way. The Benedictine monks at Nursia, who I love very, very much, talk about doing beer evangelization, where they'll have people come to the abbey, to the monastery, to try the beer they make. Beer Nursia, the Benedictine monks, who are American guys, by the way, but who reestablished monastic life at the founding in Norcia. They make a blonde and a dark beer, and they'll say, brew evangelization or beer evangelization. It's easier for some hardened atheist to talk about beer, and then, by the way, maybe he needs to go to confession, and it's a kind of icebreaker. That's what Philip Neri does throughout the city. He'd find topics people like, talk to him about it, maybe actually beer, right? Like, I don't know, wine, local politics, and eventually talk about Christ. In 1548, he's 33 years old at this time. He founds, along with his confessor Persiano Rosa, the Confraternity of the Most Holy Trinity of Pilgrims and Convalescents. The primary object being, as it would seem, to minister to the needs of especially pilgrims who are coming to Rome on pilgrimage. Members would meet for prayer at the Church of San Salvatore in Campo, where the devotion of the 40 hours done before the exposed Blessed Sacrament is first introduced to Rome. St. Philip Neri, another beautiful aspect, this class's beauty, he's all about prayer. He's very much a prayer warrior. But again, in a very normal dude way, he just loves God. He wasn't like this shameful, oh, I'm holier than thou. I'm always praying, aren't you? You know, oh, I'm sorry, I can't come watch the game. I gotta pray. Like very much pray in secret, as Christ says, let your father see, he'll repay you. And encouraging people to pray with him, to do adoration, to do prayer. And he's living the gospel in his life too. Let's note that right away. With ora et labora being so beautiful, the Benedictine motto. He's not a Benedictine. But we just got done talking about St. Benedict, ora et labora, prayer and work. He's doing that. He's constantly in prayer and he's doing the work of what Christ did, ministering to the lowest of the low, the prostitutes, destitute pilgrims, and living this life.
Did you say he was a monk?
He is not a monk.
He's just a
regular guy. He's nothing right now. He's a lay guy.
Okay.
He's a layman.
Okay.
But it's an excellent question. In 1551, at age 36, he receives minor orders, is ordained a deacon, and finally a priest. He does not become a priest till age 36 in 1551. Now, if you remember what I talked about the Benedictines, they're all about this cliche, bloom where you're planted. You don't have to go the world over, do crazy stuff. Just do good in your own community. Kind of very Teresa of Lisieux, you know, do ordinary things with extraordinary love, Mother Teresa, that kind of philosophy. He's going to go to India to work as a missionary, but friends tell him, you know what? No, dude, just stay in Rome. You've been in Rome. You're doing great work. Just stay here. Why go to, are the people that you'll meet in India, are they of a higher worth or a lower worth? No, people are people. The gospel needs preaching everywhere. You should just stay here. And he does. When he does, he eventually founds one of the things he's most famous for, something called the oratory. Oratory. He founds this already about age 40, like 1555, 6. The oratory, like a lot of things with, remember, normal dude Philip Neri, is very low-key. It's a place where every evening people meet in this hall, which is the oratory from which the kind of fraternity gets its name. People meet in the oratory, they do prayers, hymns, reading from scripture, church fathers, martyrology, and there's perhaps like a lecture based around a disputed question, a question someone would pose. Some people as well in the oratory will compose music. Again, part and parcel with the singing of hymns. And what becomes novel is, well, first of all, the whole time, Neri is always on the ministerial trail. Remember, he's out in the city. Hey, let's just talk about whatever. And then let's talk about God. He'll hear a lot of confessions at the oratory. And that is a hugely important thing. I don't have to explain the importance of the sacrament of confession to Catholics. For all the non-Catholics who watch our show, I know again, there's millions of atheists who watch Maple Syrup History. Hello, guys. Confession is really important because what Catholics believe, obviously, it restores us to relationship with God. God forbid we're going to confession with mortal sin on our soul. Of course, if you've committed a mortal sin, you need to go to confession immediately. But I'm saying God forbid you commit a mortal sin in the first place. But even absent that, even a venial sin, a kind of lesser sin, it's like taking a spiritual shower, right? Confession cleanses the soul, restores you to relationship with God, brings you, if you sundered that wholly by mortal sin, God forbid, it restores that. But even if you've damaged it in venial sin, lesser sins, just it cleans your soul. So Neri is very much a cleaner, garbage man. He's a spiritual garbage man. He's a spiritual plumber, electrician, just blue collar worker, ora et labora, for the salvation of souls. The oratory is kind of very chill, low key at first. Remember, just a bunch of friends gathering together, whatever. But as the community grows, it becomes necessary to kind of formalize it. And by papal bull in July of 1575, by this time our man is 60 years old, the congregation becomes formalized. Quote, the congregation of the oratory. There's a new church built 1577, and Neri's supposed to serve as kind of superior general for only a couple years. They appoint him for life because he's the man. P.S. He's the man. Like really, I can't say enough. Like you catch more flies with honey than vinegar. This man was beloved on a kind of personal level. But check out how humble he is. Neri's like, but I don't want to be in charge really. His co-fraternity, I'll read this about in a second, is very low key. It's not like the monastic binding orders. It's very low key. So he is going to set up a model whereby other branches of the co-fraternity, the congregation of the oratory, they're kind of autonomously governed, and they don't have too much oversight. He's the anti-tyrant. I don't know what that means, what exactly the name would be, but think about like people who are CEOs of companies, whatever, and kind of dominate the company. He's not like that. He's not involved in politics, but when they need someone to do something important politically, he steps up to the plate. He persuades Pope Clement VIII to revoke the excommunication and anathema pronounced against Henry IV of France in the 1590s. It's a very brutal. We don't have time to talk about it in the course of this specific lecture. I love that maple syrup history, whatever our class is, this year, once more being beauty, we stay on topic. If I was doing a class on European history, of course we would, but we don't have much time to talk about this. I'll just mention briefly, there's a brutal war in the Reformation, Counter-Reformation era called the French Wars of Religion between 1562 and 98. Catholics and Protestants, back and forth, a lot of violence. Henry IV, this guy who's anathemized, converts to Catholicism, what a lot of people say under false pretenses. He famously says, Paris is well worth a mass. I'll convert to Catholicism to become French king. He was Huguenot, Calvinist. My Calvinist forces lost the Catholics. They want me to rule, but I got to become Catholic. Okay, fine. Well, so all this kind of stuff is being swirled about. It is Philip of Neri. Well, what do the Beatitudes say? Blessed are the peacemakers. They'll be called children of God, who brokers of peace, gets Clement to kind of back down. And Henry, like personally cannot thank Philip enough. Thank you for doing this. The king. Thank you for kind of normalizing relations between the French crown and the Pope. And it's very, very cool. The guy who has no desire to be involved in politics at all wins the Nobel Peace Prize, let's say, kind of like a huge political boon, reconciling the Vatican and the French crown, eldest daughter of the church. And he's probably like, yeah, no big deal. Did you guys see the game last night? Let's talk about that. Let's talk about stuff around town. Where are we meeting up for gelato later? Kind of attitude. Very kind of normal person. More information about his confederation of the Confederation of Oratories of Saint Philip Neri, Oratorians. Remember the Congregation of the Oratory, whatever you want to call it. Today, it was founded in 1575. Today, there's over 70 oratories and some 500 priests belonging to this quote unquote order. I say that they're not bound by like monastic vows. They live only by quote the bond of charity. And Frederick William Faber describes this Oratorian charism as quote the spirituality of everyday life. So once more, he's very much a Therese of Lisieux, ordinary guy type figure. Oratorians have what is called stability. They are committed members of a particular oratory, but they could move under special permissions, but there's no vow of poverty. They can keep their possessions. But those who afford to, of course, are encouraged to kind of support both the oratory and especially give to the poor. It's once more a kind of low-key, relaxed spirituality to which Philip would respond. Love covers a multitude of sins. Maybe if you're really on fire with love of God and neighbor, you don't need all these kind of extra rules and stuff. And I love rules. I just got done talking about how much the St. Benedict's rule was the last episode, but this is more relaxed than that. Almost getting ready to talk about his quotes. We're going to finish the class. Again, we're probably done by 2:15, 2:20 at the latest. Philip, people said, possessed a playful sense of humor, and that was kind of the secret of his popularity throughout Rome. A lot of miracles were attributed to him. And at the time of his death, it was found that he had 2 broken ribs and an enlarged heart. And again, he lived to be 80 years old. He lived a full life. Some people say, oh, there's perhaps a natural cause to this. the myth behind it, myth does not mean fake, it means sacred story. How true this is or not, I leave that to God. But the myth behind it is Philip was once so enraptured by the love of God, so deep in prayer, that God like enlarged his heart as like a symbol of love. Like he felt his chest about to explode, burning with God's love. Like this man was on fire with Christ's love. And again, in the most normal way, not, oh, I'm so holy, so now I'm going to kind of float above you and look down on you. Like he was the most based in the true sense of the word type person, planted in the ground, rooted, very humble, and just beloved by the Roman populace. Frederick William Faber has this to say about him. This was an English hymn writer, theologian who converts to Catholicism from Anglicanism. His name once more is Frederick William Faber. You might know him. He authored the hymn Faith of Our Fathers. That beautiful hymn that we sing often at Mass. It's a very beautiful hymn. He wrote that hymn. This is what Frederick William Faber, author of Faith of Our Fathers, Catholic convert from Anglicanism, like the most famous one, especially 19th century, John Henry Newman. This is what Faber had to say about Philip. Quote, practical commonplaceness was the special mark that distinguishes his form of aesthetic piety from the types accredited before his day. He looked like other men. He was emphatically a modern gentleman of scrupulous courtesy, sportive gaiety, acquainted with what was going on in the world, taking a real interest in it. Giving and getting information, was very neatly dressed, with a shrewd common sense always alive about him. In a modern room, modern furniture, plain it is true, but with no marks of poverty about it. In a word, with all the ease, gracefulness, and polish of a modern gentleman of good birth, considerable accomplishments, and widespread knowledge, end quote. That's awesome. How often do you think of saints, modern gentlemen? We often don't think that. And here's Philip Neri. How beautiful is that? I love the Pullman, Arsenius, Anthony's of the world. As we talked about the Egyptian desert fathers, who, one guy put, rocks in his mouth and didn't speak for 3 years and stuff, the kind of crazy aesthetic practices. This shows you can be holy so long as by God's grace and his love in whatever form. And that in itself is very beautiful. I'm going to finish by reading quotes from the man. I want you to buckle up. If you're listening in a car, make sure you're wearing your seatbelt regardless. People always listen to this in the car. I heard one time that the traffic heading into Seattle, the radio frequency got disturbed because too many people were trying to download my podcast and listen to it in the car. They couldn't do the AM check this for bad weather transmission. So if you're listening in the car, please make sure your seatbelt is on normal, just because obviously. But I want you to buckle in metaphorically, and I'm going to just shut my mouth. I'm going to read the quote, shut up in terms of my analysis. Listen to how gentlemanly, common sense, simple, and joyful his advice is. Without further ado, quotes 1 through 26. I'll just give you the numbers if you want to keep score. All from Philip Neri. Number 1, a joyful heart is more easily made perfect than a downcast one. Number 2, Philip prayed, let me get through today, and I shall not fear tomorrow. Number 3, the true servant of God acknowledges no other country but heaven. Number 4, well, and when shall we begin to do good? Now, I said I'd shut up. On this quote 4, I'll make a little insertion. I always talk about how much I love both Father Chases, our amazing, wonderful pastor here, Father Chase Hasenroll, and the diocesan director of vocations in Peoria, Father Chase Hilgenbrink. And the latter, Father Chase, in Illinois, he was doing a series once on Philip Neri, or a little episode. And he said it was funny, like Neri would be out downtown watching the football game at the bar, normal guy stuff. And people would be like using profanity, dirty jokes. And Philip Neri, in a very non-judgmental way, would be like, what if we just don't use bad words? What if we just act good? And well, and when shall we begin to do good? It's true. Not judgmentally, not how dare you, no, please do not use that language in my, that was kind of school marm. Just like, hey guys, what if we just act good though? Number 5, God takes a special delight in the humility of those who believe they have not yet begun to do good. Number 6, to petition our Blessed Lady in our most urgent need, repeat after the fashion of the Rosary, Virgin Mary, Mother of God, pray to Jesus for me. Number 7, if you are ill and cannot fast, be more generous in almsgiving. Number 8, scripture is better learned through prayer than through study. Number 9, that we are generally the carpenters of our own crosses is a truth sadly easier to recognize in others than in ourselves. Number 10, there is nothing the devil fears so much or tries so much to hinder as prayer. Number 11, do not grieve over the temptations you suffer. When the Lord intends to bestow a particular virtue on us, he often permits us first to be tempted by the opposite vice. Therefore, look upon every temptation as an invitation to grow in a particular virtue and a promise by God that you will be successful if you only stand fast. 12, to preserve our cheerfulness amid sickness and troubles is a sign of a right and good spirit. Number 13, he who continues in anger, strife, and a bitter spirit has a taste of the air of hell. Number 14, obtain humility through sincere and frequent confession. Number 15, it's back to the first quote I actually read today, right? You'll remember it. Cheerfulness strengthens the heart, helps us to persevere. A servant of God always ought to be in good spirits. Charity and cheerfulness, or charity and humility, should be our motto. Number 16, one of the most efficient ways of keeping ourselves sinless is to have compassion for those who fall due to frailty, and never to boast of our own righteousness. But with real humility, acknowledge that if we are in a state of grace, it is by the mercy of God. Number 17, there is nothing more dangerous to spiritual life than to wish to rule ourselves after our own way of thinking. Number 18, there is a liberality to creation, and it shows the goodness of the Creator. The sun scatters its light, the fire spreads its heat, the tree throws out its arms, which are its branches, and reaches to us the fruit it bears. Water and air and all nature express the liberality of the Creator. Meanwhile, we who are his lively image do not represent him, but through our uncharitable and degenerate manners deny him in deeds, even as we confess him with our lips. Some Aquinian scholars said, yeah, the rocks are Catholic, definitely. Even the rocks are Catholic. Because if we take that seriously philosophically, if we believe Catholicism is but the expression of the ultimate reality, the universal truth of who God is and how the universe is ordered, yeah, human beings, the abuse of our free will are the only ones that buck that plan and say, no, I'm going to buck it the way an animal, bucks a rider. Get off. I'm not going to do it. 19, this is great. Hate no one. Hate no one. God never comes where there is no love for our neighbors. Number 20, if you really wish to become a saint, never be defensive and always acknowledge yourself in your fault, even when what is alleged is untrue. That's very much like the Desert Fathers. Are you the Desert Father who's a terrible bad guy? Yeah, it's me. Like, we should always be working on our humility. If pride is the worst sin, it's been said, humility is the queen of the virtues. 21, scruples are an infirmity that will make a truce with us, but rarely peace. Humility alone defeats them. 22, be often reading the lives of saints for inspiration and instruction. 23, in order to persevere in the life of faith, learn discretion. We cannot do everything at once, nor become saints in 4 days. 24, we must not become so attached to the means of the pursuit of holiness as to forget the end. We mortify the flesh, but we must also mortify the brain, which is the chief means by which we become sinners or saints. 25, last two quotes. 25, a most excellent means of learning how to pray, ? Acknowledge that we are unworthy to pray, and so place our efforts entirely in the hands of the Lord. 26, all of God's purposes are to the good, although we may not always understand this, we can trust in it.